to a young lady who is after my own heart, and I think all of us would like our kids to be achievers like this. Adora, can I please have you once?
Hi everybody, it's great to be here. Hello everybody again, and I really enjoyed the conference. I hope you are too. I've just learned so much from hearing these inspiring talks. Unfortunately, I'm not at all athletic, but I think I can learn a lot from the examples of people who are. I want to talk to you a little bit about my experiences and then also some of the things people to learn from kids. So first I want to ask you a question which should be fairly easy to answer. When was the last time you had lunch or coffee with a friend or colleague? Imagine a situation, a conference like this, it might have been 5 minutes ago. But now I want you to imagine that in every one of those situations where you were eating with your friend, that your friend was the only one talking, and in a very condescending voice. The reason I'm asking you to imagine this is because in too many cases, this is what an average adult-child relationship looks like. You know what I mean, sending the kids off to another room while the adults talk about literature or music or current events because, wow, you don't want poor little children exposed to high culture. That to happen. As a society, we rarely include young people in our conversations. It's also rare that we take the time to listen to young people. But what's the big deal about listening in the first place, you might ask? Because kids are when we grow up, and then as adults, they can have a say. They can vote, they can take part in conferences, they can do all kinds of things when they grow up. But the thing is that as we age, we become more influenced by the messages that we receive from society. We'll listen to what everyone else thinks and think, okay, maybe I should think that too. We may be more gloomy and have less inspired ideas because of everything that we've seen. So I think that it's very important that adults embrace what they can learn from us. Because when you don't, when you send us out of the room, shut your ears to our ideas, then you're closing your eyes to potentially bright, wonderful ideas. So at the conference, probably many of you heard from Tony Fernandez and Emil Agarwal talking about some of the ways that they listen to young people within their company and give them opportunities for success. I wholeheartedly agree with this approach because I believe that giving the opportunity to share your ideas shouldn't be something that comes like waiting in a long line to pick them up inside. It should be something that comes no matter what your age. And I'm not saying that kids are the only ones who have good ideas, and no, adults don't have any good ideas. I learned so much from being included in adult conversations, from going to conferences like this, which is why you really shouldn't send kids out when you're having a conversation with your friends. And when you think about it, the best relationships are reciprocal. Think of your business partnerships. Can you think of any really, really good business partnerships you had where one person totally wasn't part of it, or one person totally wasn't being involved, not speaking? What was the last good friendship you had with someone who never wanted to know what you thought? It's easier to listen to someone when they listen to you. When I feel respected by others, I'm more likely to return the feeling. So every one of you in the audience can think, instead of always demanding you listen to me, maybe it's time that you started listening to us. Because after all, we have a lot to teach. I would challenge all of the adults in the room with children to tell me if you've never, ever learned anything from your kids. They've never said something true that you're just a little bit afraid to say. They've never drawn a picture which makes no sense whatsoever, magically impossible. They've never helped you navigate your iPhone. Come on, I know you're in there. Growing up, I was very lucky that my own family valued having my sister, Adriana, and I in discussion. We were always invited to share our ideas, to share our thoughts. We didn't automatically, because we were very opinionated children, as you'll find out. And so sure, my parents weren't so enthusiastic about my long-held theory. I have 2 stomachs, and the larger one is for sweet, so that one never gained much credence. But they tended to listen to everything else. Kids can be brimming with interesting, creative ideas. You just need to find an outlet. A creative outlet could mean sharing ideas with others out loud. A creative outlet could mean writing. A creative outlet could mean music. Or countless others could be science, math, art, or any other area. directly tied in with resourcefulness. What can we make out of the things that we have? Maybe you don't think this is so very important, but this is what I would ask you. What kind of employee would you rather have? A resourceful one who can make the most out of any situation? Or one who can only do what they're ordered to do from step-by-step instructions? It seems too often, even though I think the answer is probably fairly obvious, we'd like a resourceful employee. It seems as though we're really going for the second. I want you to take a look at this video from Priya Gneeson, who spoke about the topic of creativity at a conference that I organized at Chef. We could have the Priya's video up.
Practice at the classroom. It's our time and all the students have a blank piece of paper and a couple of color markers, and they can draw anything they want. So let's take a look at what these students are drawing. The average girl in the classroom would probably draw something like this. And the average boy in the classroom will probably draw something like this. Now, why did this happen? I don't know if they came at school or anything, but I've been thinking about it. From the time students start school, they're taught to do things one way. Teachers will constantly push them to do things in a certain manner, even if it's not explicitly stated. And they begin conforming to social and student norms. Girls should draw princesses and flowers, and boys should draw dinosaurs and giants. Even though one girl over there might want to draw, say, a purple monkey eating a blue pineapple while surfing in Hawaii, she probably looks at everyone else who's drawing and thinks, everyone else is drawing flowers and dinosaurs, and I don't really know if I can even draw a monkey, so maybe I should just draw a flower too. This mindset is already slowly destroying students' imaginations. Let me show you a couple more examples, since this becomes more noticeable in higher grades. This is one of my poems from 6th grade as part of creative writing assignment, and it's about winter. But actually, to be honest, only half of this poem is mine. All of the words in green were already provided for the poem, so the framework and structure was set, and the topic was already picked. All I had to do was fill in the blanks with random words and how to read it. Almost no thinking involved. In fact, the only thinking I did was coming up with synonyms for the word ice. So, anyways, this is where you start seeing how schools are trying to mold students. They're curbing creativity. Do we really need someone to write half of the poem first so we can just fill in the blanks? Are we not capable of writing a full winter poem by ourselves?
So that's an excerpt. The speech is actually about 7 minutes long, and I really highly encourage you all to go to the TED Sherman website to find her speech. And so she grew up, her parents are actually originally from India, but she grew up in the US going to public school. And this speech is talking about her experiences in public school with seeing efforts for creativity, maybe not conscious efforts, but just the effects of activities she talked about. And so in the United States, many of our public schools really haven't progressed beyond the way they were in the 1800s, where you open up your textbook, you memorize a specific portion, and you get tests on that portion. With few opportunities for creative activities, and really creative, truly creative opportunities, not just fill in the blank. I know that one criticism of many Asian school systems is that same attitude, the drilling, the memorization equals learning. And sure, to some extent, we do need drilling and memorizing. I mean, I would remember my multiplication tables by hand. But if we expect creative individuals who can invent and write for the how-to manuals, not just follow them, then we need to progress beyond that. So I know that we've heard a lot from different speakers, and I've heard quite a bit about how the Indian system is very based on that. But I don't want to blame education for any lack of creativity. Our lives are shaped by the time we spend at school, but equally so by the time that we spend at home. So when you think about your children's lives and how much of their time they're spending at home, you can really see how people are going to be shaped at that age. Creativity starts at a young age inside the home. But unfortunately, a child's world today is really saturated with passive activity, sitting in front of a television screen. And it's fine in moderation, but it's not good when that's the only fun that you have. Growing up, my sister and I were very lucky to have opportunities for creativity. We had a few very essential things: wooden blocks, styrofoam, great outdoors, and most importantly, our imagination. With these rather unconventional tools, we put together scenarios on our garage carpet. My sister is giving me a disgusted look because she's really embarrassed by the picture. I'm going to draw special attention to him after. But these are pictures to us in our childhood. And we would create these handmade mud sculptures, we would garden, create little plays. We would pretend to be kings and queens with envelope hats. It was very fun. And my parents didn't restrict us, didn't tell us, no, you guys you can't get mud on your arms, that's just not good rule. You can't bring blankets in the living room, no way. You know, they didn't give us those restrictions. We had room for creativity. And without knowing it, my sister and I were probably utilizing this creativity to an extent that would help us in later life. Now you might be thinking, oh, she's really gone crazy, she loves us to let our kids make a mess, mud sculptures, playtime process. But I want to emphasize the key word here, let. You don't have to make your kids do mud sculptures and articulate, just something that I do. Just let them have opportunities to do something that they enjoy. And give them the support and resources to make those activities possible. There's no magic bullet, no perfect creative activity that everyone likes, so get your kids involved. Ask them about their interests. My parents used trial and error. My older sister, Adriana, was interested in music ever since she saw instruments in the music store because they looked pretty awesome, I think. And then she also saw some neighbors taking lessons too, so she thought, I'd like to do that too. And when she was 5, she started taking those lessons, and I followed soon after when I was 4. I tagged along and started learning the instruments, piano and violin. And although I loved the shiny piano keys and the warm wooden glow of the violin, I hated, strongly disliked about everything else. If my sister was advancing by leaps and bounds, I was inching along like a tortoise on a bumpy road. Actually, I literally remember dragging my feet downstairs to the lessons. Have you ever seen when someone walks really slowly? It's like that. The piano notes would just put me to sleep, and it was pretty inconvenient during lesson times if I was falling asleep. So combine lack of progress, the lullaby effect, and the unhelpful self-comparison to my much better older sister. These all motivated me to tell my parents, Mom, Dad, I want to play music, I like playing piano and violin, but my parents didn't let me, so I dragged on quite a while along the way. The turning point came when I was 6. My mom bought me this laptop so that I could improve my spelling by seeing how I spell words better. And so once I had a computer, I started writing pages and pages of these paragraph-long, really short stories. And I'm not going to lie to you, my stories at the time were not exactly awesome reading material. You would see the next Harry Potter come out of the stories that I wrote at the time. But the object wasn't to be the best author in the world. The object was to have fun and to learn from something that I enjoyed doing. And I did. I would often be so excited about my latest story that I would want to skip dinner. I would say, I'm in the middle of the story, I'm going to come down later. And my parents couldn't come over to me while I was precociously typing away and said, what are you doing writing those stupid stories? Maybe I'm practicing, you really need to get back to that. You should be doing useful work. But they didn't. They encouraged me to keep on writing. I reasoned with my parents that with all my writing, surely I could afford to quit playing piano and violin. I used the writing itself as a persuasive tool, producing such amazing works as this poem, which you can read in your own lecture. I'm too embarrassed to read it out loud. So yeah, I was being sarcastic when I said amazing work, but I improved. Now that I had a good reason, a viable talent, a creative activity, my parents stopped wasting their money and decided to let me focus on my writing. So compare with a more recent poem of mine. Please read this one. Okay, so go backward. I'm not going to credit the improvement in my writing entirely because of the fact that I practiced. It has to do with the increase in my vocabulary, the time I spent writing over several years, and the lesson that I learned from my reading and learning. And of course, the guided realization that comes with age that nowhere, not even in the most desperate of rhyming circumstances, should I bang my head with a mace used to rhyme in some place. It just does not work. The big point of the story, however, is not that you just shouldn't criticize first effort. It's not that you just should give kids room for creativity. It's not just that my bad poems tend towards combinations of mistimed syllables and desperate rhyme schemes. The big point of this story is that my parents listened and gave in for the right reasons. You heard from Rob talk about how his parents only let him focus on his artistic work at school after he showed that he could be economically sustainable. He showed that he was really serious. My parents let me quit piano and violin because I showed that it wasn't just because I was really lazy, or they didn't just think, okay, she's whining a lot, so we'll give in. They actually saw that I had something that I wanted to dedicate my time to, that I was serious about. And on the other hand, sister, there's a success story there. She continued on with piano and violin, and now she's won several awards. And so you can take a look at a video of her playing at some events.
Then he was actually matched by several organizations, making the final donation nearly $4 million. So what do you think of when you think of making a wind turbine out of scrap material, selling tangerines for your cousin? You probably think irrational, difficult, impossible. You might say, in fact, there's no way that's going to happen.
But it's important to realize that irrational beginnings can lead to great things. Some might argue, well, stupid thinking, irrational thinking has led us to a lot of problems in the first place. I would argue that we need to fight fire with fire. We're confronted with all these unprecedented challenges, from global warming to religious extremism to resource scarcity. Our world is, in every sense, under threat. Desperate times call for, well, desperate thinking. Maybe you've heard a similar saying before. This kind of unrestrained thinking has potential to give us new inventions, new medicines, new innovations. Innovation, creativity, and sometimes maybe irrationality provide the fuel for the engine of progress. How are we going to move forward if we don't continue to innovate? And where is that innovation going to come from? Kids, who are going to be the adults in a few years. So the ideal adult response is obvious. Adults would listen and learn from kids, taking our opinions seriously. Kids will learn from adults, and adults will learn from kids. But what's the reality? It depends. If you're not lucky, if you're not one of the Bilals or Williams or Ruckhogs out there, then maybe be quiet. That's stupid. Don't touch that. Go away. And that's what's preventing adults from learning from kids. Just try to have a conversation with someone who puts their hand over your mouth and says, shut up. Too many kids have to face this metaphorical challenge because of the hands over mouths, the restrictive attitudes towards kids on the parts of adults, whether parents, schools, or our societies. What are those restrictions? When you think of restrictions, you might think of fences and gates, rules, and curfews. But restrictions can come in more ways than one. For those of you who saw the title of my speech, Let Kids Be Kids, I want to explain that. Let Kids Be Kids is a fairly popular attitude in the idea. It's a fairly popular attitude maybe in the United States and many parts of the Western world. So what does that mean? Basically, don't place any responsibilities on kids. Do your best to make their life totally stress-free. I would argue the lack of responsibility does not necessarily equal lack of stress. I was watching a very good documentary called Orange, and it was about all these kids in the United States who are born into families, millions of dollars in names, Trump, Vanderbilt, and I watched this, and these kids knew they wouldn't have to work to support themselves, and yet were they free of trouble? Were they free of stress? No, that knowledge came with its own set of troubles. So to me, the idea of letting kids be kids itself highlights low expectations. The children, in their natural state, will do nothing more than eat, play, sleep. Let kids be kids is a restrictive measure to me, just as much as fences and gates. It's one that fences in and fences out. Sure, you can go play around, but starting on profit, no way. That's just not a kid thing to do. Wait until you're older. Who knows how many potential fiction writers or mountain climbers or company founders there might be in the world. If their parents haven't said no, that just isn't a sign of great for your age. I will call these adults with their under expectations of childhood adults type number 1. They created my notebook. On the other hand, there are those examples of adults who have extraordinarily high expectations of childhood who are restricted in another way. I will call these adults type number 2. You may have seen some of them. These are the parents who have huge expectations, who form milestones and goals for their child's every step. At 1 year old, my child will be able to speak fluently in 5 languages, etc., etc. They form respectable and high-earning careers in their heads. My child is going to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer. Who knows how many potential fiction writers or mountain climbers or company founders there might be in the world. In this case, not because their parents said, no, you're too young, but in this case, because their parents said, no, that's too risky, I'd like you to go towards something more stable, a little more prestigious, don't do that, do this, maybe because that was what their parents said. Adults type number 2 remain fixated on one scenario, a straight line. They care desperately about their child's grades, sending them to the best cram schools to prepare for tests. And they're the opposites of adults type number 1. This adult probably wouldn't want their child to hang out with the other child should they get any bad influences. So the question is, who's in the right and who's in the wrong? Adults number 1 and 2 aren't a few people that I handpicked in particular. They are societies and their attitudes. The well-known education researchers who got to meet maybe some of you saw his TED video. He was speaking at an education conference where I was also a speaker. He was talking a little about the Indian education system, how it was often very rigid when it comes to rules. Would you guys agree with that? Fairly rigid about rules. See some nodding. It's about whether it's allowed or it's not. So you see how restrictions don't just come from parents. They come from all around. From these descriptions of attitudes towards kids that we see, you might all terrible and gloomy and that there's no hope whatsoever, and Boris Speacock is such a negative-minded person. But I've learned a lot from examples here in India of people who are working to change that mindset. Louise Giasso, speaking at the AIM conference, found Child's Play. Maybe some of you have heard of it. It's a charity which brings classical music to underprivileged children in India as a means of social empowerment. Maybe you saw Kiran Mirsen speak on TED at TED India as well. She founded the Riverside School, and it's a progressive school that doesn't just teach subjects like English and math, but it really gets kids to go out there and take action. For instance, they had their students rolling sun sticks for 8 hours in order to get them to experience what it would be like to be a child laborer. And following the activity, they were motivated to go door to door and start talking to businesses. They didn't start off by giving a lecture on this is child labor. They didn't order the students go out there and start talking to businesses. They got young people to be part of the conversation. They asked them what they thought. They really saw the change in their eyes. And that brings me to another very important point. When we're included, we get involved. If any of you were following the elections in the United States, I'm not sure how well you know most, but you know Barack Obama, obviously. A lot of you support. Think of all the areas where the drive and energy of young people can be harnessed, maybe within your businesses. For example, the prestigious TED conference has a program called TEDx, which allows people to set up their own independently organized events. And the idea took off. So now there's a whole series, not just of adult TEDx programs, but of ones organized by youth. So for instance, TEDx Next Generation Asheville, the United States, recently had one of their speakers featured on the TED homepage. And TEDx Youth Seoul was created and organized by teenagers in South Korea. And I'm especially proud of one TEDx event that's very close to my heart called TEDx Redmond. You saw snippets of Priya's speech before. And I'm proud of TEDx Redmond, not just because I curated the event, but because it was one of the first all-out kids. That is, it was run all by kids. We had a committee of teenagers. It was with all kids in the audience and all kids speaking. With 19 speakers and performers, all under the age of 16, I think that we really showed to a lot of people that you don't have to wait to grow up in order to do amazing things. So this is the kind of thing that can happen when adults like you believe in kids' potential. And yet too many adults don't bother to include youth at all. To change the way that we look at youth, we must all realize that we can learn from those who are younger than we are. I'm 13. You might think that that's about as low as good, but I learned so much from people who are younger than I am already at my age. Hearing about examples of kids who've done great things, you might think, okay, there's some kids out there who are really good, but the kids I know haven't started charities or built wind turbines or become successful artists. They really don't show those qualities of fearlessness, resourcefulness, and creativity. I would say that having you seen your children who are not even too afraid to, as I said earlier, share with you their instincts and impressions. I don't say that we're always fearless, honest, creative, resourceful, and I don't say that adults are never so, quite the opposite. But I know that many who are looking at these examples of kids' accomplishments will doubt these are really average kids. But the truth is, we are all average kids. The difference is not that we had ideas. The difference is that somewhere, someone out there listened. Here on Beerseki, who founded the Riverside School, said over time in college, I encountered adults who actually believed in my ideas, challenged me, and had lots of cups of chai with me, and I was struck by just how wonderful it felt. My generation is facing ever-increasing challenges. In order to ensure the success of our shared future, millions of young people need you, whether you're a parent, an aunt, or uncle, whatever role you have working with children, millions of young people need you to be someone who listens. The adult who actually believes in our ideas. Nelson Mandela once said, there can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children. When we judge a society, we must see how kids' dreams are fulfilled, how their aspirations are encouraged. We must create a world where youth are truly free to be who they are. It's up to my generation to solve tomorrow's problems. And whether we can do it depends on exactly how we let kids be kids. When it comes down to it, I agree with let kids be kids. That is, let kids be everything that we can be. Because empowering me and my generation is engendering the progress of humanity.
Having questions, I request you to ask them. Can I request Vandana Singh to come on here?
Congratulations.